I am making an updated Earthbound deck profile, mainly because I realized that it's been a while since I last made one, and I honestly really like how this Earthbound deck is working, though some changes will still need to be made. And I will go ahead and say at the beginning, this is a 45 card deck list, but you can easily make that 40 by taking out 5 cards, which I'll mention what those are when I get to them. Starting off with the monsters, I play 3 copies of Earthbound Prisoner Groundkeeper. Groundkeeper has the effect that while there's a field spell in play, I don't remember if it has to be a face-up field spell, but while there's a field spell in play, Earthbound monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. Let's see, where is that effect? Okay, so yeah, it doesn't have to be a face-up field spell, but as long as there's a card in the field zone, Earthbound monsters can't be destroyed. And then if it's normal or special summon, you can special summon level 5 or lower Earthbound monster from your deck. And then if you use this effect, you cannot summon from the extra deck for that turn except for fusion and synchro monsters. And you can only use that effect of Earthbound Prisoner Groundkeeper once per turn. Next, I play 3 copies of Earthbound Prisoner Linewalker. Linewalker has the effect that when it's normal or special summoned, you can add Earthbound Prison or Harmonic Synchro Fusion from your deck or graveyard to your hand. Or is a thing you can add from grave. Yeah. You can only use that effect to Linewalker once per turn. And then you can banish this card from your graveyard. I believe it's all monsters your opponent controls. Now, if you target an effect monster your opponent controls, that's summoned from the extra deck, shuffle it back into the extra deck, and then you can. And then your opponent can special summon a monster with the same name from the extra deck. Which, the only time that actually matters is if your opponent has an Appaloosa, because it either makes them use a negate, or they put Appaloosa back in their extra deck and get a 0-attack Appaloosa. Which most of the time they're going to negate that because it'll come back with no attack points. Therefore, no negates. And then next, I play 3 copies of Earthbound Prisoner Stonesweeper. Stonesweeper has the effect that you can discard to add a level 3 or lower Fiend Tuner from your deck to your hand, which most of the time you'll want to add Groundskeeper. Unless you already have Groundkeeper, and then you'll want to add Linewalker. But it has another effect that if there's a card in the field zone, then you special summon it from your hand. You can only summon it that way once per turn. And next, I play 3 copies of Garbage Lord. I'm only playing Garbage Lord in this deck because it's another level 5 dark monster you can summon from your hand by paying 2,000 life points. But that, honestly, I don't think it's that bad, considering a monster in the extra deck that every time you use this effect, my opponent's giving me life points, so it's fine. And the only downside of this its only restriction is that relating to XZ summons, but considering this deck is fusion and synchro based, that effect doesn't really matter. And then next, I play 1 copy of Earthbound Immortal, Wirikocha, 1 copy of Earthbound Immortal, Asilapiscu, 1 copy of Earthbound Immortal, Kokoraya, 1 Kusalu, 1 Chakuchalua, 1 Kokopakapu, and 1 Earthbound Immortal Uru. 5 of these 7 can easily be taken out of the deck if you want to make it a 40-card deck. But I like playing all 7 of them just because, well, I play the deck for fun. So, if I had to choose only 2 to keep in the deck, it'd honestly be Chakuchalua and then either Asilapiscu or Kokoraya. But Wirikocha lets you return cards on your field back to your deck, up to 3, to make your opponent discard the same number of cards, and then it gains 1,000 attack for each card that was discarded. Asilapiscu has the effect that if it leaves the field other than by its own effect, it gets to destroy all monsters your opponent controls that are in face-up attack position, and then they take 800 points of damage for each one. Kokoraya is the same thing, except it destroys all cards in play. Kusalu just has the effect that if it would be destroyed in battle, you contribute 1 other monster, have your opponent's life points. Or you tribute a monster so that's not destroyed in that battle, and then your opponent's life points are halved. Chaku Chalua has the effect that while it's in defense mode, your opponent cannot enter their battle phase. And then, once per turn, you can activate its effect and inflict damage to your opponent equal to half of its defense points. I actually made a deck at one point that was centered around getting out Chaku Chalua and then raising its defense by as much as possible. And then Kokopakapu just has the effect of destroying a monster in battle. Your opponent takes damage equal to that monster's attack. Kind of pointless on a monster that can attack directly. And then Uru can contribute one monster to then take control of an opponent's monster till the end of the turn. And then they all share the effect of if there's not a face-up field spell, they self-destruct. There can only be one Earthbound Immortal on the field at a time. And then they can attack directly but cannot be targeted for attacks. And that's it for the monsters for hand traps. I play 3 copies of Effect Veiler. This you can just discard Effect Veiler to then be able to target an effect monster your opponent controls and negates effects. 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, just because I still think it's one of the better hand traps in the game, where you can just discard to negate any card that includes the effect of adding from deck to hand, sending from deck to grave, or summoning from deck. For these spells, I play 1 copy of Terraforming, just because add a field spell. Then I play 2 copies of Earthbound Fusion. Earthbound Fusion lets you fusion summon a Dark Fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as material. And then it can only activate during the main phase unless a card is in the field zone. And I believe it has a grave effect too. Let's see. Okay, and then if there's a card during your main phase, if there's a card in the field zone, you can banish it, summon an Earthbound monster from your hand or graveyard. And you can only use each effect of Earthbound Fusion once per turn. Then I also play 2 copies of Triple Tactics Talent. This card can only activate if your opponents activate a monster effect during the main phase, where you can then activate one of 3 effects, where you draw 2 cards, look at your opponent's hand and shuffle 1 card back into the deck, or take control of an opponent's monster till the end of the turn. And you can only activate 1 Triple Tactics Talent per turn. And then next, I play 3 copies of Earthbound Prison. Earthbound Prison lets you target, when it's activated, you can target 1 monster your opponent controls and negates effects while Earthbound Prison is in play. And then you get 1 additional normal summon of an Earthbound monster during your main phase. You only get that effect once per turn. And then if this card in your possession is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, then it negates all face-up cards your opponent currently controls, and then halves their life points. I was actually playing a game that, with this deck, that I managed to win because my opponent activated Eradicator Epidemic Virus in my draw phase, while I had 3 Earthbound Prisons in play. So, yeah, they got to destroy all my spell cards, but I think it was they changed something 4 to negate one of them, so that I only had 2,000 life points left. But still, though, the fact that I hadn't done anything yet and they were already down at 2,000. And then I poked directly with an Earthbound Immortal and won. And next, I also play 3 copies of Crossout Designator. If you don't want to play Designator or don't have it, it can just be 3 other additional hand traps like Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, because that's a good one, especially against some decks like Tenpai Dragon. Or you could just play some more draw cards like Allure of Darkness, for example. The Crossout Designator lets you declare a card name, banish a copy of that declared card from your deck to negate all effects of that card for the turn. Make sure I have that correct. Declare card name, banish 1 of that declared card from your main deck if you do negates effects, as well as the activated effects and effects on field of cards with the same original name until the end of this turn. Yep. That is maybe because there's again sometimes when getting impermed or ashed or veilered can just stop your turn. So cross out lets you deal with that. And then one other thing I will mention is that Droll and Lockbird is in the side. So if I'm really worried about that, then I'll keep this card in and put in at least one Droll and Lockbird. And then next, because I am playing all 7 Earthbound Immortals, in case I brick on them, I am playing 3 copies of Tokusano Shinkyojin. This lets you send monsters from your hand or face-up field to the graveyard that's levels equal 10 to then draw 2 cards. With this, you send an Immortal, and then you get to draw 2. And then finally, for the spells, I play 3 copies of Harmonic Synchro Fusion. Harmonic Synchro Fusion lets you take 2 monsters you control, send them to the graveyard, and then you get to summon a fusion and a synchro monster from your extra deck that you can make using those 2 monsters. So like you can use one level 1 tuner, level 5 non-tuner to make Earthbound Servant, Geo Gremlin, and Geo Gremlina. Basically, just using the same 2 to fuse and synchro summon, but it doesn't have to be an Earthbound monster. One thing I actually used to do with this deck, or was working on, was making a deck where you can actually take a level. Well, I want to say it was Runic Earthbound, where you could activate it by sending Sleipnir and the level 1 to then make a Baron and a Draco's Tapelia. So you get 2 negates off of one spell. However, one of those is now banned, so you can't really do that one anymore. And then you can only activate 1 Harmonic Synchro Fusion per turn. This is the last part of its effect. And lastly, for the deck, I play 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. This lets you target 1 effect monster your opponent controls and negates effects until the end of the turn. If this card was set when you activate it, then it also negates all spells and traps in its column. But if you don't have any cards on your if you don't have any cards on your field, there we go, then you can activate this card from your hand. And that is it for the main deck. Like I said, you can take out 5 of the Earthbound Immortals to make it a 40-card deck, and then you can also if you take out 5 of the Immortals, then you can replace Tokusano Shinkyojin with cards like Allure of Darkness. Or if you don't have designators, then you can take those out for more hand traps too. And then, for the extra deck, I play 3 copies of Earthbound Servant Geo Gremlin. Geo Gremlin has the effect that once per turn, you can target 1 monster your opponent controls, or 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, and then your opponent gets to apply 1 or 2 effects where they either destroy that monster or increase your life points by that monster's attack. And then during the battle phase, Geo Gremlin has the effect where it can activate its effect to then be able to fusion summon an Earthbound Fusion monster using monsters, or I believe it has to be an Earthbound Fusion monster. It might just be a generic fusion summon. No, it has to be an Earthbound by banishing materials from your hand or field or graveyard. Yeah, hand, field, or grave. Usually when activating it, I'm banishing a Synchron Fusion to make the big boss monster of the deck. That isn't an Immortal. Then next, I play 3 copies of Earthbound Servant Geo Gremlina. Gremlina has the effect that when fusion summoned, you can add an Earthbound monster from your deck to your hand. Once per turn, you can target a Synchro monster you control. It gains the ability to attack directly this turn. And then if a monster your opponent controls is destroyed by the effect of an Earthbound card, you can activate Gremlina's effect to then target that destroyed monster and inflict damage to your opponent equal to its attack points. Which, that's the main reason why most people just increase my life points. And then next, I play 3 copies of Earthbound Servant Geo Griffin. Geo Griffin has the effect that once per turn, quick effect, you can special summon an Earthbound monster from your graveyard and defense position, except for another Geo Griffin. And then, if Geo Griffin is destroyed, then you can target 1 card your opponent controls, inflict, I think it was destroy that card, and then you inflict 300 damage per different Earthbound monster in your grave. Let's see. Okay, no, it does not target. You destroy one card in the field, so it's non-target destruction, and then a 300 burn for each earthbound monster, different name, on your field or in your graveyard. Then I also play 3 copies of Earthbound Servant Geokraken. Geokraken has the effect on when it's fusion summoned. Or is it when it's special summoned? Okay, if it's special summoned, you can add a field spell from your deck to your hand. And then if your opponent special summons a monster, you can activate Geokraken's effect to destroy all monsters that were summoned in that turn, and then 800 points of damage for each monster destroyed. Let's see, make sure I got that correct. Okay, you destroy as many of their special summoned monsters that were summoned that turn as possible. Usually this effect doesn't do a lot of damage unless it's against a pendulum deck and they just pendulum summoned. And lastly, I play 3 copies of Earthbound Servant Geogracia. Geogracia has the effect that when it battles a monster, it reduces the opposing monster's attack to 0. And then if Geogracia destroys an opponent's monster at battle, then Gracia gets to destroy all cards your opponent controls. And lastly, if Gracia leaves the field because of an opponent's card, then you get to special summon one earthbound monster from your deck or extra deck that isn't Geogracia. I want to say it's also graveyard too. You can special summon one earthbound monster from your deck or extra deck. And then Geogracia must be fusion summoned. It cannot be summoned by other ways. Okay, but that is it for my Earthbound deck profile. If you have any ideas why you need to improve the deck, any ideas for decks I can see be made in the future, or decks I can see face each other, I'm still trying to talk one of my friends into doing Earthbound versus Red Dragon. But if you have any ideas, comment down below. I always read the comments, and thank you for watching.